Thank you very much once again, Brother John, and it's a pleasure to be able to welcome our guests to Gem FM and the Comfort Zone for this, the 36th edition, I forgot to mention, of the Comfort Zone this afternoon. Today it is April the 17th, and I have a packed panel here this afternoon in the persons of Ambassador Eugene Pursoo, Miss Valerie Gordon, Mr. Orson Thomas, Miss Denise Ogilvie, Mr. Tony DaBreo, and one of Gem FM's regular. You just can't, it's like Gem FM can't do anything without him, you see, Delbert Baptiste. And we know Delbert is one of the main elements of the Talking Points and the Caribbean Connection and the Battle of the Sexes. And we have him here this afternoon on the Comfort Zone. So to get started, I want to allow each and every one to introduce themselves, and in doing so, I know that, a major talking point right now is the issue with the volcano eruption, La Soufrière, and I know that so, in introducing yourself, let's start with Mr. Pursoo. Good afternoon. Welcome.
Could you hear me?
Yes, I am hearing you.
Okay, I was just trying to get my video up, but I'll just leave that for now.
Brother John, I'm hearing an echo in the background. Somebody has the stream live in the background, so it's coming through. Whoever has the stream running live in the background, you need to stop. You need to stop the volume. Hello.
Somebody has a feedback.
Yes, someone has the stream, the live stream itself on social media, on Facebook. The volume is on in the background, so it's coming back.
Yeah.
You're hearing it like an echo. So whoever has the stream playing in the background, please. You need to cut the volume up. You can hear everything that's happening right here on Zoom.
So on my end, there's no additional stream on my end.
Yeah.
So at least.
Ambassador Pursoo, go right ahead.
Okay. All right. So it seems to be better now. Yeah.
Pablo, I think we may have lost him, you know.
We've lost him?
So.
Okay.
Yeah, let me see what
well, in that case, while we wait, we're just going to move on to someone else, and he's going to come back in shortly. So moving on to Miss Gordon, Miss Valerie Gordon.
Okay. Pablo. She's not here yet. She said she'll be here in about 3 o'clock.
Are you hearing me now?
Okay, yes, we're hearing you now, Mr. Pursoo. We're hearing you.
I'm gonna fix my audio later.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I don't understand some of the concepts that just pop up. My son's name is popping up on my screen rather than mine, and I don't understand how that come about. But in any case, let's go back to the question you had asked me.
Yes, to introduce yourself on the talking point, a major issue right now is the Soufrière volcano, and I know many of us have been reaching out to our Vincentian brothers and sisters and so on. So if you would mind sharing a few words on that while you're at.
Yeah, well, just my quick introduction. Eugene Pursoo is my name. I'm a former ambassador of Grenada, retired Director of International Education at the City University Medieval College, and I'm simply just enjoying life at home now. Getting all the most I could from my grandkids, enjoying playing to them every day. So that's where I am. That's who I am right now.
Okay.
I'm also the president of an organization in the United States called the Caribbean Diaspora United Incorporated. Now,
Okay.
to the situation in St. Vincent, as we all know, quite tragic. And the most we from this end could do is lend our support as best we can to the people in St. Vincent. I think I sent you, Pablo, I sent you this morning
Yeah, you sent me.
Yeah.
Yeah. With
the drive that we're doing. As a matter of fact, I urge the people from my group and Caribbean Diaspora, because we have that on our Facebook page and other forms of social media. And I urge them to drop off food at my home, Long Island, which is one collection site, and the other is the Friends of Central Brooklyn in Brooklyn. It's 674 Prospect Avenue in Brooklyn. And so I know on Tuesday, I'm going to be making a trip to that site to drop off whatever has been sent to my home or brought to my home. And I'm going to extend it again, another drop off for next Monday. In the meantime, I am talking to my Vincentian friends as much as I can to find out what it is that we in the diaspora here could do from their perspective. So that's where we are with that.
Okay. So moving on, let's move on now to who do I have next? Mr. Orson Thomas. Welcome to you, Mr. Thomas. Welcome for the first time to GEM FM and to the Comfort Zone. No, not for the very first time. You've been here on Comfort Zone 1 before. I just forgetted myself. You know, when you reach my stage of maturity, these things happen. You know, we have these moments.
Oh, sure.
So good afternoon and welcome, Mr. Thomas.
Yeah, good afternoon to everyone. Really appreciate you inviting me back. Second time, Pablo. My first time was with Coach Naka and group, and just want to say my thoughts and prayers to the people and the country of St. Vincent. It's a pretty rough time. It's challenging to have a volcano, but my prayers goes out to the island of St. Vincent and the people there. As Pablo just said, my name is Orson Thomas. Currently based out of Dallas, Texas. Over here in 2005 on the basketball trip. Hey, Pablo, I guess I'm getting some really bad feedback.
Yes, I'm getting that feedback. Something is playing in the back. Okay, it seemed to have stopped now.
Yeah, I think when we're not speaking, like everybody have it on mute, so it's working a lot better now. Yeah, so going back to it, I'm based out of Dallas, Texas. I came over here back in 2005 in a basketball scholarship. Played basketball in Oklahoma and Kansas. Went on to get an MBA after I finished my undergrad with emphasis in enterprise resource planning and accounting. From there, transition to public accounting, where I'm a CPA and did audits for oil and gas and real estate client for Deloitte & Touche, which is probably one of the big four accounting firms here in the U.S. Prior to Deloitte, after Deloitte, I kind of left and focused more on the real estate and oil and gas space. I kind of transitioned to the private equity venture capital world, where I'm a senior manager for a company here called Standish Management, where we focus on helping general partners and raise equity for real estate, oil and gas venture capital funds. We do anything from consulting, advising GPs on structure to help them maximize return to investors. We play a big role in almost any alternative asset space here. I'm a senior manager, mainly focusing growing the real estate practice at Standish Management. So just want to say thank you so much for inviting me back. It's been a pleasure. I'm looking forward to the discussion today.
Well, I had to invite you because when you listen to your background, you are a man who involved in money operations and in money business. You know what I mean? So
Definitely.
you must have something of value to contribute to a conversation that is about building our domestic rural economy on the pillars of diaspora financing and co-management. Because the argument is that, and we had that conversation, we had that session here one time earlier this year, you know, we started that conversation, and this more or less is a continuation of that conversation. And that's why I felt it necessary to have someone like you participating in that event here this afternoon, because I have no doubt that you will have something of substance to contribute to that. But moving along with the introductions, I believe that we come to Ms. Denise Ogilvie. Good afternoon, Ms. Ogilvie. It's a long time our paths haven't crossed, even virtually.
Yes, but I've been stalking you online, so I've been looking at what has been going on. So my name is Denise Ogilvie. Back home, and I'm an NGO. Right now, I'm a researcher here at a college in Illinois, and we do socio-ecological systems design and analysis, because a lot of our resources back home have a great amount of wealth, our natural resources. What we've been doing, though, is doing old development, or old what we believe is new development, with making hard infrastructures, destroying our natural environment that has more worth than even the built one. And as we see, we have nature has been giving us one knock after the other. You know, we see the La Soufrière going off. What are we coming back with? Are we going to do hard infrastructure that we know climate change and other elements are going to knock again? Or are we going to look at the recovery of natural resources that can actually be recovered again and again, and we can take local ownership? I think that disaster is sometimes a great opportunity to rethink and reshift our thinking. And as many knocks as the world has been taking, how can we do that? You can see tourism fall off. Now, as St. Vincent is concerned, I mean, I don't know an island that we don't have relatives in. We all related somehow. If somebody isn't married to somebody or has somebody as a cousin over there, we're all cousins. And so how can we help each other? And in helping each other, how can we rediscover our wealth? Because our culture is wealth. Our natural resources are wealth. But for some reason, we keep giving, what I tend to say is we keep selling the cow to get the milk. You know, how can diaspora now come to the point of helping to support rural community development and take it back outside? You could be the best marketers that we have. You know, you're in touch with Whole Foods, you're in touch with Fair Trade International, you're in touch with all these possibilities. How can you then help communities to invest in their natural resources and own themselves instead of selling them to some owner to become their taskmaster for small pay? That's just my introduction.
Yeah, I'll be coming back to you for a little bit more on that. I know that you do not have a very long time with us here this afternoon, that you have another assignment to move on to. So you'll be leaving us shortly. So we'll move on now to Mr. DaBreo. Mr. DaBreo, welcome once again to the Comfort Zone, as you were part of the original team when we started that discussion on this issue. Good afternoon and welcome to you.
And good afternoon, everyone, and good afternoon to all the listeners. I just, in terms of background, I spent the last 25 years in the insurance and financial services sector, obviously part of the private sector, rather. And in terms of St. Vincent and the challenges that I think the broader Caribbean basin faces with regard to, I would say, emergency and disaster response, I think there's work to be done in the area of logistics. I think in terms of disaster response, we have to do, in other words, a better job in terms of serving our fellow respective communities. in the face of disaster. So I think that what has happened in St. Vincent has provided us, I think, an opportunity to study the effects of these natural disasters on us, and how we can best respond in building an infrastructure that allows for rapid response and ultimately better services administered during disasters. So I am hoping to hear much more from the panel over the next few minutes, and I may hopefully next couple of hours. So that's my story. I'm sticking to it. So I'll turn it right back to you.
All right. And finally, as we make the rounds for now, because we do not have as yet, Ms. Gordon hasn't joined us as yet, I don't think, no. Move on to Mr. Delbert Baptiste, Mr. JMFM himself. Unmute your mic, Mr. Baptiste, and you introduce yourself.
All right. Good evening. Good evening. It's a pleasure to be on with such an august panel. I share your assessment, Pablo, that when the first conversation we had here, as a matter of fact, I think it was one of the best panel or conversation I've had in a long time, discussing issues of development as it relates to Grenada and the Caribbean as a whole. As for my background, I've pretty much spent my entire life in issues of development, whether it was real estate, both in the private and commercial sector, did some banking in the mortgage business, and also retail management at a fairly senior level. Pretty much so the last 20 years has been in project management, and I do it from both sides. So a lot of times you would find that either somebody is primarily involved on the execution side, but not in terms of formulating plans. So I have I've been granted that talent to be able to work on both sides of the issue. So I'm also involved in sitting and planning projects, and also involved in execution. And there's a few stuff that we're working on now, hopefully in the next couple of weeks to make a big announcement on GMFM about that. But in terms of how do we view development going forward, and in particular as it relates to rural development, and I would like to see where this discussion go. But I agree that there must be some emphasis on rural development. But in a country the size of Grenada, or St. Vincent for that matter, we're largely a rural country, because once you get out of that sort of 3 or 4 square miles that most of our capitals are located, we find out that almost the entire rest of the country is rural based. So I was particularly interested in what Ms. Ogilvie said in her last point, about how do we sort of, and I'm probably changing her words slightly here, but how do we monetize our culture? How do we monetize our own product so that we become sort of masters of our destiny? And she made reference to the point that she said, often we find people who are making decisions for us, who are representing us, end up selling the cow to buy the milk, and I think that's a powerful statement. So I'm looking forward to a really good discussion. As for our brothers and sisters in St. Vincent, I said it last night, St. Vincent was the first country I visited as a young man, and had the opportunity to go there many times, and I consider, even though if I haven't been there in a while, I know the place very well. I've been going to St. Vincent since before you could not circle the entire island. You had to drive around, get to Georgetown, and go back the other way. So now they have a bridge over that, and in 1979, I said that earlier and today also, that I was part of a youth brigade funded by the the Canadian International Development Agency, who went to St. Vincent after the 79 eruption to help clean up. So we worked in churches. We helped people replant banana. We did a whole. It was such a rewarding experience for me. And but it appears that this eruption is 100 times worse than the 1979 eruption ever was. I was listening earlier on to the song by Black Stalin, The Caribbean Man. And in times like that, that song always comes to mind because we live in a region, you know, probably about 10 million people living in the region now, with probably double that in the diaspora. There's really no reason why we have not been able to put a better union together to serve the needs of our people. And I think that's all part of the process of how we develop. And whatever happens in development in rural Grenada will have implications for what happened in development in the rural St. Vincent and Kitts or Barbados. So I'm looking for people like Mr. Thomas, these young, energetic guys, to point a new way, because the Caribbean will only sink or succeed together. We definitely cannot make it alone. You're competing against countries like the United States. The European Union found it necessary to come together in one form or the other. You know, there are a lot of moves on the continent of Africa now to unite it as a trading bloc and to look at areas of how we can find greater cooperation among the countries. And we are not hearing anything about that conversation in the Caribbean. So I'm looking forward to seeing how we can talk about that in relationship to development, and what kind of development is going to bring not only the best financial returns to our people, but as Ms. Ogilvie talked about, how do we maintain, enhance, and develop our culture so that we don't lose who we are as a people in the process as we try to empower people.
Yes, you made some very salient points there as regards Grenada's state, the state of Grenada. I always make that point, that Grenada is more rural than urban.
Mm-hmm.
So if the rural economy is not functioning, it means that the majority of our people are affected.
Yeah.
It means that the lives of the majority of our people are affected. It means that the prospects of the majority of our people are affected. It means that the prospects for the majority of our children is affected. And that's why it is critical that at this juncture, especially with the challenges that we face, we look at what the situation is within the rural economy, within the rural communities, I should say, and the kind of impact that it has had and continues to have on the lives of people, because we see that the level of indigent poor is likely to increase significantly this year. So it tells you that there is a need. There is something urgent that has to be addressed. And we cannot sit by and say, well, we should have done this a long time ago. Okay, we should have done this a long time ago, but we are here now. What can we do here now going forward? How can we ensure that what existed previously is changed, so that we can begin to see ourselves working together and addressing those issues? Seeing as we say that we love our country and we proud of our country, how do we allow that pride to transfer in a practical way, so that we could begin to see some of these issues that we lament about with every opportunity that we get? How can we see it changed? And because, as I said, we do not have Ms. Ogilvie here for the entire duration, and we want to let her go, at a time convenient to her. I want to start with her on that topic. And as we said earlier, the topic is building our domestic rural economy on the pillars of diaspora financing and co-management. And seeing that she is someone who I got to know her being involved in civil society organizations and so in Grenada, and then working with rural communities and so she ought to have a very good appreciation of the rural life in Grenada and the culture of the people, which she referenced already, and the challenges that people face, generally speaking, which is compounded by this COVID-19 situation. So against that background, I want to get her perspective on that topic, building our domestic rural economy on the pillars of diaspora financing and co-management, and how critical she thinks it is at this juncture, and any approaches that she finds that may be appropriate in getting to that point. Ms. Ogilvie. Hello, is your mic on or off?
Sorry. Thank you, Pablo.
Got you now. Yeah.
Age, gets to you eventually. Technology, Yeah, it's an honor to be among such panelists, to tell you the truth. The youth, our future of tomorrow, Mr. Thomas, a lot of us still looking at the possibilities of today. Mr. Delbert, oh my gosh, thank you so much. Sometimes you wonder if you're the lone voice in the wilderness and it's just a few of us, irate NGOs that are on the ground talking. It's nice to know that businessmen think the same thing too. Our culture is our market identity. Who we are makes us stand out above everybody else. We're known in the Caribbean as the Greens. St. Vincent calls us the Greens. And that comes from the day when we used to feed the Caribbean on the federal maple and the federal palm. Do I have that right? Yeah? Yeah. And, we didn't recognize our assets. And because I feel that this has part to do with the history since Fedor, when the English came in and said, if you're not English, get off the island. So all those people living in the rural community started to wonder, am I relevant? Am I important? Am I good? Is the way I'm living, to have food in my backyard, is that a good thing? Well, that is a good thing, because COVID time here in the United States, you couldn't buy seeds. You couldn't buy seeds. You're looking around for seeds, you can't buy seeds. And they were then limited. So what does that say to you? Every man jack trying to make sure that they had food, because they were thinking about the worst. Yes? So for me, if we understand, first of all, that we have wealthy food, we have what we call the nutraceutical and pharmaceutical market there. Moringa, neem, Tyo, all of these things. When you come here now in the United States, you see it's sold for pound and crown. It's like, I can't afford to be me up here at all. You know what I mean? So, but here we are, spitting it out. We want to make sure we have lettuce, cabbage, all what we call the European foods for the tourism market. But look at where the tourism market is now. Where is the tourism market? And I sent Pablo an article from the IMF who are now saying the Caribbean has to develop tourism in a different way. It can't put out hard infrastructure anymore. It has to leverage the assets that it has, which is the natural environment. And when I look and travel to places that have something looking like Janet House, yeah, and you're paying pound and crown to stay there per night, I begin to wonder, have we overthought the whole thing? If our people in rural community are independent, and I'm saying this to you because I remember living in St. George's, and some workers came to me and they said, ma'am, I'm looking for a job for 2 weeks. I said, why do you want a job for 2 weeks for? He says, I just want enough to buy some things like some seed and stuff, and then I'm going back. I don't want a job for anymore, because if I leave the land for too long, it gets overgrown. And then I have to pay her money again. to get it cleared back to there. I was talking to construction people up in Guelph who refuse to go down in St. George's and work because by the time they take the bus to go down, come back and pay for electricity, come back and pay for water, come back and pay for food. They're not really making money. The young economist over there, this is the realities of home. This is the realities. Your money not taking you very far because we import everything. So milk and everything is really way expensive. So what if we were to be energy independent, food independent, and water independent? Meaning, you're collecting all the water off your roof of your house, right? You know how to, there's simple measures of making sure that it is clean and ready to drink. Yeah, even just passing it through charcoal. When you buy those Pursoo water systems, break it open and see what's inside. Charcoal. Anybody can make it. Yeah, it's knowledge is power. Knowledge is also money if you could take it into action. So educating our people that they are not. Pablo, we ain't poor, you know. We just don't know how wealthy we are. That is the problem that we're having. I know, amen. We preaching to the choir over there. So what we need to start letting our people know, instead of running from rural community to go and live in Montu and have the bus bring food for you, stay home. Develop the land. But we need the diaspora to help us with market. Young man, not oil and gas, you know. Look at what the United States is going right now. They're going into hydrogen energy. What is hydrogen energy? It's electrolysis, yeah, that breaks the water molecule into hydrogen and oxygen. Why can't we be first? Why do we have to be last? I beg you, let your company do some research. I could give you the name of people who can actually help you with this. Jaiga Shah is now doing the financing for the United States on energy for Biden and they. I'll give you his name. Please research it. Yeah. So here are the possibilities for us to be able to provide our own energy, have our own water, and have everybody doing food. Because then when they leave to get a job, it is profit. What are you working for? Not to pay the bills? You're paying lights, water, and food, right? That's what we're doing when we leave the house. But if you were doing that in your center, because jobs right now is like it's self-induced slavery. You have to keep on that treadmill every day, coming to work to pay the bills. How can you free your people, Mr. Thomas? How can you make them independent? You are the future. We don't need to sell to any more big guys. We need partnerships. Tell them, come and market us. And the diaspora, I was there for the diaspora bonds. We don't need diaspora bonds. What about crowdsourcing and crowdfunding? What if, and this is something that People in Action, my NGO, has been developing, Pablo knows this, mapping, community mapping. What if we had maps of the community, of all its resources that the community put together and says how many human resources they have? We have a lot of human resources, you know, and much land we have, and how many moringa trees we have, and how much of us doing coconut oil, and how much of us doing any kind of root flower, how many of us doing these things? And what if that map was a way of the diaspora knowing how they can give back something to home? $75 million before Hurricane Ivan, $75 million US a year in remittances. What if we could structure it in a way where the remittances can not just be things in the barrel, but it could be education for everyone. What if we viral education, put computers in every community center and had online education for our children so that we don't have to grow according to the growth of our leaders, but according to the world. So I don't want to take up all the time, but that's my food for thought. And
and that's the reason why we're having this conversation, because essentially we are cognizant of many of the assets, much of the assets that we possess, and is because we have it's something that we have been speaking to for quite some time, and we also aware that we need to take certain steps to address some of these situations. The thing about it is, what kind of structure is required in order to be able to facilitate some of these things and to make them happen in a practical way? What kind of structure do you need to happen within the diaspora community? What kind of structure do you need to establish here domestically? What kind of relationship, right? What would be the nature of the relationship? What are going to be the terms and conditions? And how do you source the funding? You know, what would be the sources of financing? What would be the approaches that would be taken by the diaspora community for raising financing? How do you identify a workable project? And we have people here with skills in that area, and what would qualify going forward. We had a gentleman not on the comfort zone, but on Talking Point a couple of weeks ago, and he indicated that he has a very good project to go in farming and renewable energy and stuff like that, and he needed $25,000 in order for him to be able to take advantage of some export opportunities and stuff like that, and he was unable to get the money from the commercial bank. You know, $25,000, and he has an operation where that's going on, where he's doing farming, he's rearing livestock, mostly pigs, and he uses renewable energy. His energy source is solar. He uses biogas. You know, he get that from the waste from the pig. The waste from that goes back into organic fertilizer. You know, and he makes all sorts of chips and he makes flour from the local product, the local banana and dasheen and all that kind of stuff. You know, and the waste from that goes to feed the animals. You know, so he has a very eco-friendly operation going on, which is what we claim we need to get into if we are going to be sustainable. But he couldn't get $25,000. And I guess if we had a domestic entity with the capability to manage such an operation and a relationship with a group in the diaspora, we could you know, things like that could be addressed quite easily. You wanted to say something, Ms. Ogilvie?
Yes, I just wanted to say that the gentleman's name is Mr. Sandy. It was one of the first projects we did with biogas digesters.
Yes,
There's one in the prison
Sandy
as well.
Mm-hmm, yes.
And that's, Mr. Sandy is a prime example of what can happen. But what we need to also do is look at people or organizations like Grenada, because we need a multiplier effect. It's really good to build a man. It is. But we have to see how we can also build communities. We have to come back to the points of Maroon. This is the strength of who we are. How can you get our people to come together, not individuals alone, but how can they do the multiplier effect within their communities? Grenada, Art, Gina, they're all very good organizations for working with the community to figure out how to do that. There was a project, and I want to caution you, because there was a project in Mount Plaisy where some ladies were doing sweets, very, very good sweets. They were making money, they were okay. And then some developer comes along, some NGO from outside, saying, you know what, we need to make them better. Let's get them a factory where it's going to be big. The cost became more. Right now, we have in the United States these cottage industries. I was just on a seminar with the Italians talking about how the small farmers coming together as a cooperative, each one having their own place and developing it that way is what's working. We tend to follow the model of the big development that is now cursing where they are and trying to run into where they've damned themselves. We need it differently. We need to do it differently. And so we need newer eyes to it. We have to look at things under risk assessment, resilience. Will this stand up to shocks? We've had financial shocks, climate shocks, natural shocks. Can it stand up to shocks? And if you want to see something stand up to shocks, look at the ladies in Subi's Marquee who are doing the baskets. They do it in their own home. You pass it. They built a really nice community center that they never use. But every day they're inside of their homes, cleaning, boiling the screw pine to make these baskets. The overheads are low. We have to stop thinking like through the colonialist eyes that educated us in the beginning and start looking at the new eyes that are there, that people like Ben and Jerry's, Whole Foods, they're just changing the model terribly. Let's get forward thinking. And we were there, in a revolution. I know that sounds like a curse word to some people, but the revolution where we educated everybody, that public education, it empowered us. So that's why I'm saying, yes, it's great when one man has the power, but we also need the diaspora to think about education for the masses. And we have technology. How could we do that? There's things like Kickstarter. How can diaspora do their own Kickstarter? People like Grenada show how their communities, the potential of their communities by mapping it. And you're talking about mechanisms. Then there's the possibility of saying, okay, I see Mr. Sandy. How can I invest? This is what we need for his money. How can we put together and put it in? $75 million in remittances. You guys could do this.
Yeah, I know it can be done, and that's why we're having this conversation. Brother John, you're supposed to have a clip line up there for me, CDU Inc. We play that, and when we return on the other side, we continue that conversation. I want to bring in ex-ambassador Eugene Pursoo here at that juncture. So, Brother John, please. No, Brother John isn't there. Brother John seemed to have left us. Mr. Pursoo, are you there? Are you hearing us? Your mic is off.
Muted. Okay, yeah. I was muted.
Now?
Yeah. You, are you hearing me?
Yes, we hear you.
Again, I apologize for the lack of picture, but I'm not going to mess around with it too much because I don't want to lose everything.
You know what? Yeah, you don't want to lose everything. Yeah. I wanted to play a clip from our first program, but Brother John seemed not to be at his station presently, and it really had to do with from our initial conversation. You spoke about, and you mentioned it in your first offering here this afternoon, the Caribbean, how do you call it? The
Caribbean Diaspora United Inc.
Diaspora United Inc. You did say during that time that there were some initiatives in the pipeline that was being worked on. Can you remind us about what were some of these things, and give us a little bit more about what that entity is and where you are at presently?
Well, let me do that. Yeah. Pablo, let me do that briefly because I want to get back to that conversation about development. Mm-hmm. So just briefly about CDU. Yeah. In fact, I was in Cuba and I was invited to speak at an event. And when I got back to New York, I started researching and realized that we have in excess of 15 million people in the diaspora, but we're not organized. And because we're not organized, no one really need take us seriously. So I reached out to as many people in Brooklyn as I could, and from Jamaica, Trinidad, Guyana, right across the Caribbean. And we decided to form an organization, the purpose of which is to organize the 15 plus million people. We realized that in 2014, for instance, the diaspora transmitted in excess of $14 billion to the region. And yet, we remain disorganized, so we're not doing the best we can. Now, the purpose is twofold. One, to use this organization to bring about betterment to us in the diaspora and to make significant contributions to the communities in which we live. And the second aspect is to support Caribbean development. We look at things from a regional perspective. And when I say regional perspective, let me just say to Ms. Ogilvie, when you talked about age, I was looking at you and I'm saying, what is she talking about? But then when I heard you start talking about the federal palm and the federal maple and these kind of things, and straw hat making in Marquis, which I'm very, very familiar with, having grown up not about a mile away from Marquis. When I heard you talk about these things, although I must tell you that that industry has just about died by now. The wild pine, no more wild pine on these things. But getting back to the point. So yeah, we were supposed to launch the CDU in October of 2020 and then reach out to the community. And here came COVID. We had invited the now Vice President of the United States, Kamala Harris, the Vice President, to be our keynote speaker. And we had invited the Prime Minister of Barbados to be our second keynote speaker. And we are about to do something big and then launch. Here came COVID, so we had to just retreat. And we've been doing everything online. COVID has forced us into a technology space that is revolutionizing the way we do business. And so we have been continuing to do what we can in that restricted space. We have an executive of about 25 members that comprise people from Guyana, Belize, right up to Jamaica. We were looking to add people from Cuba and the Dominican Republic, Haiti. And we have 5 standing committees. One deals with social justice. Are we not backing off from that? Because we live in the United States. Any day, that knee could be on one of our children's neck. So we are very much engaged with that, and we want to work with organizations like BLM. We are very serious about that. We publish a lot about injustice in this country. In fact, I just finished an article yesterday about the role of the police in American society. Given the genesis of that institution in slavery, the police was formed, established to hunt down slaves who tried to find their freedom by escaping the plantation. They had the license to kill escapees. And it seemed to me they still think that they have that license. So our social justice committee is for real. The next committee we have is education, the education committee. Our education committee is looking, first and foremost, we want all people in our diaspora to be more educated with regards to Caribbean culture. We want our people to understand the region called the Caribbean, right? So we do a lot of things in that committee. Then we have a committee, a cultural committee. It was delayed a bit because most of the cultural things we wanted to do depends on us getting together as a people to enjoy exchanges, to enjoy interaction. So we have our plans, but we're waiting when the society has achieved a certain amount of vaccination and we could return to a semblance of normal to launch some of those programs, which would really be bringing together our artists, our cultural people. We have plans. We've been speaking with, what's his name? Gypsy, the director of the Trinidad and Tobago Carnival Committee, to do a sort of a Caribbean cultural caravan twice a year through the United States, bringing up our artists from the Caribbean to entertain us and so forth. We have something called the Regional Coordinating Unit, which is one of our organs that is completely concerned about interchanges between the Caribbean and us, whether it's in the business community, in the cultural community, in the sports community, but we have a separate organ dedicated to that exclusively. We have a special standing committee on the family, because we regard the family as the most basic building block in society. And too often we see things going awry with regards to family. And so we want to dedicate a special standing committee to do programs that enrich the whole question of strengthening and rebuilding families across societies. We've done some programs. We've done things like 5Ks, which was intended to popularize the name of the organization. We had people doing the 5Ks virtually from California to Georgia, to New York, to Canada, and then posting in the results of the 5K. We have done, before COVID struck, we started off with a youth cultural concert. And we had some amazing young people. I mean, I tell you, we have one kid, about 13, that played, he could do anything on the keyboard. I've never seen another person who could do what this kid could do you could hum a song and he'll get on the keyboard and play it back for you. So we have some great things, and we are poised to display to the world some tremendous value that are contained in our culture. And that's what the CDU is about. We are open membership. We invite every person of Caribbean background to join. As I said, we have an executive of 25, but we intend to expand that to about 35. And it's rather inexpensive. Our executive membership is $100 a year. Regular membership, about $30. And that's it about CDU. I'm going to stop at that for now. But our website is very simple, cduusa.org, right? CDU is Caribbean Diaspora United, USA.org. And so I invite everyone to just check it out. And it's easy. I never turned down a call from any person in my life. I don't care who it is. I don't think there was anyone in the UN who had a more open door policy than myself. I don't care. People would walk into my office dressed in T-shirts, and the manager of my office would get upset and say, "You can't see the ambassador dressed like that." And I would ask, why not? I don't care about the way they dress. So right now, my phone number, I have no qualms about giving out my cell number. You can't do me anything from across the telephone. So just if you want to know more about CDU, feel free to contact me. If you go on our website, you'll be able to reach me from there.
Yeah, go ahead.
I want to say a few words about development, because the older I become, the less tolerant I become with failures. And I think part of our problem is our miseducation. We are educated to be limited. Our education stymies our development. I have a problem with us always tending to look at development as Americanism or Westernization. That is a problem. And that is rooted in our particular education. And so I think that even before we do anything, it's hard to get in the granular discussion in forum like this, because I think the mindset If the mindset is not there and we get into the granular, we could be going down the wrong road. And very often that result in our limitation. That we could go back and look at many, many things we started and we ask ourselves, well, why didn't it sustain? Why did it die after a time? And I believe is that we are building in the wrong framework. We are not America. We cannot model our development on the basis of America. America was built by slave labor. Grenada will never get slave labor. So we have to stop and deal with our realities. That's what we have to. And anything other than that, we're destined to run into walls of limitation. So before I'm suspicious of education at this stage in my life more than ever. Only this morning, I was talking to a friend of mine. We were talking about the whole CARICOM cannabis policy. And I said, look at what's going to happen. I said, bro, you got lands in Mount Carmel, by Mount Carmel Waterfall. This is a good time to open a camp there. Open a cannabis camp. Let's do things on our own, because you know what? People are looking at us as bait. They're poised to exploit us. And sometimes I see us as orbiting in our own world and think we're part of the real world. So I don't want to sound too frustrated to you guys, but all I'm saying is that let's start from the start. Let's start with our thinking. I have attended and tried many things in Grenada, and I run into a wall and that wall is a particular kind of thinking that originated in colonial education. And it's a serious matter because, look, I tell people jokingly that I'm 75 years old. I'm going to live to be about 130 because I intend to. But I'm afraid I'm going to reach that 130 and see very little things change. So I want to use the balance of my life to really engage in things that I believe has real chances of succeeding, not hashing over things to sound intelligent. Because most of the educated people I know, I listen to them talk, and their biggest interest is in trying to prove to one another that they're smart, that they're intelligent. And I have no interest in that anymore. Right. I have absolutely no interest in that. I prefer not to talk if that is the kind of talk we're going to talk.
Okay, and that's the reason why we have in that session, we had that first session and we have in this follow-up one, and we have some serious expectations going forward. I want to get in Brother Thomas to make his input, but before we do, I know that he would have been sitting there listening to all that's been taking place, getting some background, and that's why I allow others who were part of the initial conversation and so to speak, so that he can get an appreciation as to where we at, what has been happening, so that he can speak from a more informed base when it is time. And that is the reason why I'm moving on to Brother Tony now. Brother Tony was part of the first session. And I want to ask Brother Tony, what, based on the fact that you were part of that first event, and we having this follow-up here, what are your expectations coming out of this exchange? And what would you say are some of the preferred outcomes, that you would like to see from this engagement and from this endeavor?
So I think when I think about there's a book here in the United States. It's called The Re-Education of the Negro, and if the concepts that are espoused within that book basically says that we have to be deprogrammed and reprogrammed. So what I call the re-education of the West Indian. I'll use West Indian simply because it's a collective term. The re-education, and it starts at the base level. So there has to be, in my opinion, a concerted effort on the part of educators to go beyond reading, writing, and arithmetic. We have to begin to talk about self-worth. We have to talk about what we're capable of. You know, when I'm here in the United States and hear what people get excited, the cool people get excited about farm to table. And I'm thinking, when I was a child, how do you think I survived? How do you think we were able to get it done? You know, I'm proud to say we didn't have a refrigerator. So guess what happened? From the bay with the jacks right to my grandmother's kitchen, and ultimately we get food as a byproduct of those farm to table initiatives. Oh, I think re-education and understanding that we are highly valuable in terms of the things that we're seeking, and I think what we find ourselves is somewhat behind the crest of that wave. And here's what I mean by that. So today, what we think is cool, when I come to Grenada, the lines of KFC are enormous. Okay? They're enormous. In the meantime, I can't wait to hook up with my buddy to go and dig yam on the estate. Now, how many people see digging yam as being more valuable than eating KFC? And I think that's where we have to begin to separate and say, hey, listen, yam, organic, whole, it's good for you. KFC, highly processed, it's rich in sugar and salts, and therefore no good for you. And I think that's part of what the journey we have to begin to embrace and get, I think, foster an environment where people see, one, there's worth in what we do. When you think about being a West Indian, I often talk about Rasta, right? And Rasta talks about being organic and eating the right way, not staying away from salt and exercising daily. And think about how in the past, Rasta was viewed as a pariah. And today, if you think about how we've done this thing, Rasta is, quite frankly, is the way one should live. And so I come back and I think before we can go beyond where we are today, yes, can we do several things simultaneously? Yes, we can. But I think at the core of our challenge, because if I think of the last 100 years in the Caribbean, I will tell you, yes, there's a few islands that have made some substantive changes and that sort of thing. But we've stagnated, and we've stagnated for a long, long time. And therefore, we have to begin to realize that what we've been doing isn't working. You know, the definition of insanity, if we keep doing the same things and expecting the same results, we are, by definition, insane. So we've got to change that phenomenon where we're expecting the same outcomes based on the same set of actions. And as a consequence, I think you will see a level of development where the children of today will emerge into just sound adults, 10, 20 years from now, who are thinking adults rather than just being led by a group of, and I'll temper my statement here at the moment, but led by people who, quite frankly, should not be leading our respective nations. So education at inception, and ultimately breaking that wicked cycle where we are less than and therefore others are greater than. We have to change that.
Yeah, well, there's quite a few things that we need to change, definitely. And in order for us to do that, as we said from the very beginning, there need to be that collective effort between us. And that's why we're here this afternoon on this platform having this conversation. But before I move on, I want to recognize the presence of Ms. Valerie Gordon, who has joined us. And before I move on to the next person, I want to give Ms. Ogilvie, who is about to leave us, the opportunity to say some parting words, some closing words before she leaves us. Ms. Ogilvie.
Pablo, you should have told me it was going to be so exciting, because I would have probably put off my son's birthday party. Val, good to see you, dear.
You can't do that. Val, she hear you.
She's driving and
yeah.
So I could totally understand that.
She's watching the traffic.
But Gentlemen, it has been really a pleasure sitting in this. Young Thomas, I am so sorry I did not get to hear you yet, but please send me the recording. I want to know. Mr. Pursoo, I already have contacted you through your NGO. So I didn't waste any time. I left my number there. And Mr. Delbert, keep this show going. Pablo, keep this on. Because I think this is the start. Val, good to see you. How's Canada? But you know, it's been heartening. Sometimes you think that you're the only crazy person. It's nice to be in a room of crazy people. Mr. Tony, if I might call you Tony, listen, you got it, man. You got it. You're right. It's a deprogramming to reprogram. Yes. And I know that we can do this. If so many great minds are thinking alike, it's like the Rastas say, centralize and organize. That's what we got to do. And speaking from, as Pablo knows, my husband is a Rasta, or was a Rasta, and I don't know if you all know him, Ras Bogart from River Road, Richard Ogilvie, who educated me, made me understand the realities of life. All this thing about federal maple and federal palm, I'm one of those diasporas who are not really from Grenada, but my heart and soul is in Grenada. I am more Grenadian. Longest place I ever lived in my life is Grenada. And so for me, coming back home is a necessity, at least even if it's my ashes. But Mr. Pursoo, I would love to be able to talk to you, because there are things that we can actually do from now. We can send home heirloom seeds, have people start this. Mr. Thomas, we can look into energy. We can be forward thinking. We don't have to think like everybody else. We can think of hydrogen energy, but this is possible. And with that, I love you all and leave you all. Thank you so much. Pablo, don't forget to send the recording.
Right. Yeah, will do. Definitely will do. And at this point in time, I want to give, as we have Miss Gordon has joined us. Hello, good afternoon, Miss Gordon. It's good that you've been able to find the time. Hello, you have switched your mic off. You have gone off screen also. Hello?
Yes, hi. I can't see it.
Yes,
Sorry,
we're seeing you and we're hearing you.
Okay, let me offer my apologies because, you know, unexpectedly somebody showed up to do something and I couldn't allow them to do it on their own. And I am actually driving because I'm picking up my husband at the moment, but I'm hoping he could take over and I could take the call. So just give me just a second so I can change seats. I have not been able to follow most of the conversation, but I heard part of what Mr. Pursoo said. Thanks very much for inviting me, Pablo. What am I going to say?
Well, you're going to give some background on yourself? You are going to do that?
What did you want me to comment on something specific? Just
well,
in the
what?
moment, based on how the conversation
actually, yes, because we've been here for quite a while now, and it's good that you've been able to join us at this juncture. And I want to, I kind of saved Mr. Thomas, so I want Mr. Thomas to get a taste of all that's been happening otherwise. And with you being someone who worked with civil society, with NGO community in Grenada, worked with, like I mentioned about Ms. Ogilvie a while ago, worked in the rural communities, worked with rural people, having been part of the revolution and doing, you know, people's development work and stuff like that. And seeing how the economic, financial and social challenges that people in these communities face, how critical do you think the concept that is being discussed presently, this building our domestic rural economy on the pillars of diaspora financing and co-management. How critical do you think this conversation is at this juncture? What do you think can be accomplished, and what are some of the approaches you think that might be necessary in order to make this become a reality?
First of all, maybe the quickest, the statistic that comes first to my mind. Well, first of all, thank you for the invitation, despite the fact that I wasn't able to come on as early as possible and missing some of the previous presentations. But what comes to mind as you ask me the question is the statistic of the last 2 national surveys of living conditions, in which the findings show that the deepest levels of poverty in Grenada are in St. Mark's and St. Patrick's, and I think the one in 1998 was in St. David's. Now that in it, and we're talking about 37.7% of the population living under the poverty line as an average, as a national average, right? And it being higher in those 3 communities, those 3 parishes, sorry. That alone demonstrates the need that exists in the rural economy. The second point I want to make is the observation that with the dislocation of the banana industry in Grenada 10, 15 years ago, I'm sure some of you might have read the book written by Dr. Wayne Sandiford about how that had significant impact on the Grenada economy. So there's a dislocation of the banana industry because, you know, these parishes are were largely agricultural. You have the factor of the rural-urban migration. So as emphasis has been put on the development of the tourism sector without an equal prioritization of the agricultural sector, most of the population have been trying to move from the rural communities to the urban, well, most of the tourism belt in the south of the island. So you have all of these factors that have really decimated the rural economy. And yet, a substantial percentage of the population still live there. You hear the people from St. Andrews crying out about it because St. George's cannot accommodate 110,000 people, right? So into that, I myself was born and raised in a rural community in Granbury and St. Andrews. So I've always had concerns about that. I want to endorse a point that was made by in the tail end of Mr. Pursoo's presentation about any attempt to address these issues being significantly impacted by the mentality of our people, right? And so to my mind, the connection with the diaspora is a two-edged sword. A two-edged sword in the sense that the remittances from abroad is a substantial contribution to the Grenada economy, unnecessarily so. However, the fact that it's treated the way it's being treated suggests a level of dependency that has accompanied that level of remittance from abroad. So it's not that like the diaspora is helping out, but with a conscious effort to help people to get on their own feet. So the attitude is more of depending on that remittance from abroad or leaving the island to join those that are in the diaspora. And that creates a very complex type of situation, right? At the same time, the point that he's made about people's attitude is so significant. And I want to add that Grenadians' attitude didn't just drop from the sky. To my mind, there is an active cultivation of that mentality that now that we don't have the colonial masters, our own people are creating and developing. Our own leaders are creating and developing our people. And any attempts to address it is met with serious resistance, right? There is also a mentality that suggests, and I have faced it because I've lived outside of Grenada on more than one occasion, that when you go home, it's like, okay, but you haven't been here suffering with us, so you don't understand what we're going through. And who are you to come now and try to bring these ideas that you think will work because you've been away? It's a very complex system of attitudes and the economics and leadership patterns that have resulted in the problems that we have.
Okay, so we do have the problem and we appreciate where we at, and it is not, life is not such a situation where you roll over and die because you are faced with challenges. And that's the reason why we're having this conversation here this afternoon, so that we can begin to move forward. And at this point in time, I want Brother John, you there with us? Yeah? Brother John has left us momentarily again. So I want to move on now to Mr. Thomas. Mr. Thomas, given all that you have heard in that discussion about building our domestic rural economy on the pillars of diaspora financing and co-management, what is your take on that concept itself? And as someone who is involved in financial management and so, what do you think would be an appropriate structure, right? An appropriate management structure for making such a thing happen?
Awesome. Thanks, Pablo. It's a very loaded conversation, and it's really interesting to hear everyone's perspective. I agree. I firmly agree with everyone's assessment and some of the points that's being made. For me, I've always said this a very long time ago. We all often need to start with education, right? And we need to change the way we think of education. You know, a lot of people now, growing up in Grenada back then and possibly now, we see education as people going to secondary school, getting 10, 15 subjects, probably now going to St. George's University, becoming doctors, becoming, attorneys. And we judge it based on this. Even when we look at the U.S. economy today, it's changing, right? I've been in the construction space for a little bit of time, and one of the guys was, giving a speech, and what he said is the people that's sitting in the trailer doing the accounting, doing the finance, is making less money than the people out in the field, right? Because there's a shortage for skilled construction workers. In the same sense, I would like to speak about the Grenada economy. I think we've gone away from feeding ourselves to becoming more heavily reliant upon tourism. And I've oftentimes talked to a lot of colleagues and friends of mine that migrated away from Grenada. And, in any investments we say we're going to make is definitely in agriculture. The problem with agriculture in Grenada, we have a lot of these small farmers doing their own thing, right? What we really need is some sort of strategic perspective where you form strategic partnership. For example, I am from St. David's. So if we look at St. David's as a whole, we need to have a farmers association that's based out at St. David's that's able to have all the farmers in St. David's come together and all grow not necessarily the same product that would compete for the same market, but they all grow different products so that we can diversify in the agricultural sector. I've always believed for you to be successful in any nation, in any country, you have to be able to feed yourself. right? My dad worked at the St. George's University, but one of the things he did every afternoon he came home, he would grow corn, peas, sweet potato, yams, nutmegs. Back then, we probably was the second producer of nutmegs, you know, and right now, I'm not even sure where we are in that list. So I think we have gone away from the things that made us who we are as Grenadians, and we're focusing on the tourism sector. And one of the things, you know, I've often questioned every time I look at the news, we have a new hotel going up in Grenada, and I'm like, are we attracting that much tourism in Grenada to support the hotel sector? So, you know, I would really like to see some analysis that says yes or no to that perspective. But I think we really need to, as people living out here, we really need to support our people, not just through finance, but formal education, right? I think we need to change the technique and how we see farming and kind of look at what some of the bigger nations is doing. How are they doing farming? How are they able to become more efficient, more effective, use different equipment to get better results? The days for where we use fork and cutlass and stuff, I think needs to change. You know, I feel like we need to start implementing, you know, more having different type of machinery to get us the same result and mass produce in some sense. The problem with that is that we have a financial burden to support or even purchase those equipments. So I think that's where we can leverage the diaspora's finance part of it. But at the same time, I'm not going to personally invest in something that doesn't have a sound financial plan with a thorough risk assessment. And when I look at any investment, I look at it from not what can go right, but what could go wrong. In that perspective, you tend to eliminate a lot of risk by trying to figure out all the negative things that can happen in that investment so that it can be successful in the future. What I would like to see, just from my perspective, is people being educated a little bit more and coming up with business plans that you can present to people willing to invest in the local economy. Coach Naka, for example, you know, I came over here on a basketball scholarship, and every project Coach Naka have, he has a plan, and he would oftentimes send me the plan, you know, what exactly he's trying to do. And I've always funded anything to do with basketball wise, because I know we have a plan, we have somebody that's going to manage the resource that is sent and make sure that is put to good use. You know, my return on investment doesn't have to be from a numbers perspective, right? But it can be for, like, a lot of people coming out here on scholarships, getting education, and being able to help somebody else back in Grenada. I think, you know, the rural economy, we need a boost, not just financially, but educationally. We need to educate our farmers a little bit more. And we need to start forming these strategic partnership among farmers in different parishes, or in, you know, I was going to say states, but that's the US thing, but different parishes, so that we all could come together as one. I think a lot of times we see it as individuals, and I don't think you can be successful looking at it from that perspective.
You know, it's interesting the note that you just ended on here, because seeing things as individuals, because at the very beginning of the program this afternoon, I played a clip which dealt with why we need to support each other and stand by each other, and the negative impact that not standing by your neighbor, or not lending a hand, or looking at the relationship with you and your neighbor strictly in terms of a competition, causes you to overlook the negative impact that it can have on your own productivity. And the analogy was used of the cornfield. He said if his neighbor's cornfield is producing substandard quality corn, when during the pollination period, his crops will be pollinated with the sub-quality seeds, and they both are not going to have quality products. So he makes sure that his neighbor has quality seeds, has quality corn, so that when the wind blows, the pollination is mutual and he is going to have quality crops. It's interesting that you ended on that note, and you mentioned the whole issue of having a planning team or structure and the whole issue of business plans. And this is what was really envisioned when this conversation initially started. Having a structure in place going forward that is going to help to address these issues in the professional manner that you just alluded to, Mr. Thomas, in terms of having business plans and things like that. And that was referenced earlier on by Mr. Pursoo when he spoke about how many things he's been involved in and what has not worked. And it was just mentioned here that how we need to look at those things that caused us not to have been successful with certain situations, and so as to mitigate and to minimize the opportunities or the chances of those kind of negative impacts on our endeavor. I want to so I want to give Mr. Baptiste the opportunity now to sort of give an overview, all right, as to what we've been discussing here and where does he see us going from here. What does he see to be an appropriate next step? We finished here this afternoon and we're moving on. What happens between now and whenever?
Well, the first thing I want to do is to share the sentiments of the other members of the panel who spoke about the ideas coming out of this discussion. And I think one of the interesting things coming out of today's conversation is that none of us on the panel had the opportunity to speak to each other as part of any preparation for this discussion. But we all seem to be feeding from the same basket, so to speak. And in particular, some of the contribution made by by Denise and the initiative by Brother Pursoo. All right. So coming up, here's how I see this. There is very little separation in terms of our understanding and our agreement, what it means for development in Grenada and the wider Caribbean, and in particular rural development. All right, very little difference in terms of our. But not almost, every member of the panel took it a little further, because we can't have genuine development without re-educating our people or educating them correctly. Okay, and Brother DaBreo spoke about that, and that is key. And it touched a nerve with me, because I was having a conversation on Facebook earlier on this week with somebody, and I made that point, and he disagreed with me vehemently, and we went on for quite a while. All right. Like Brother Pursoo, I am tired of the talk now. Every time I get into a conversation with my Grenadian brothers and sisters, with my fellow brothers and sisters from the Caribbean, we are saying the same things. There are bold ideas being presented. There are ways and means of getting this thing done being discussed. New ideas are being brought to the table. We have the managerial, we have the vision, we have the technical, we have young people like Orson who has the energy to get this thing done. So for me, there's only one way out of this, is that we have to now bring all the intellectual capital together, okay, and make it work for us and for our people in particular. We cannot continue to do this. Just have this conversation, as rewarding as they are, as fulfilling as they are. Right now, I would not be doing anything else on a Saturday evening but being in part of a conversation like that with people with friends from Grenada promoting such bold, such dynamic, such ideas that I know will be transformational for my people, you know, in the rural communities and throughout Grenada. And as Pablo said, you know, we are a rural country. We're a rural country. Once you get out of, you know, immediate St. George's and now to a greater extent the South St. George's area, everything else is rural. So we can't think development in Grenada and not think rural development. So what I would like to see, and there's some work that have started in that direction here already, and now I see that maybe one of the ways to do that is that what we've been thinking about is exactly what Brother Pursoo has already formed. So why go out and form an organization? Let's join in with him. He already has a framework. He's well respected within the Caribbean community in New York as a person who thinks in broad terms and is able to deliver. So here he has, with some of his friends and probably former colleagues and people that he may have taught in school, have come together to form this organization. So those of us who have been thinking about the very same issues outside of his organization, we need to join with him. We don't need to compete with him. We need to join with him. We need to find out, you know, what areas, you know, I think he mentioned 5 areas of social justice, and I want to touch on this a little bit because, my brother, I agree with you so much, because if we don't have life, if our kids, if our children, our nieces and nephews are not protected, and if they don't form the future of what we want to build, then we have no future. So social justice for Caribbean Americans living in the United States, it is an important issue, and I think it showed great foresight on your part and the other members of your organization to include that as part of an area for development, because life is key to everything that we do. The other question of education and culture, there's been so much discussion in the last couple of weeks about how do we monetize culture, okay? When you go to Indonesia, you go to Bali and all these other places on vacation, you don't see hotels like you see in downtown Paris or downtown Manhattan or downtown San Francisco or London or any one of the major capitals. It's hotels and tourism of a different nature. They have put together a product that reflects their culture, and I've never seen anyone there not enjoying it. So we, as Sister Denise suggested, have to redefine our tourism product. And other people, we've been saying that for a long time. Now the IMF has just picked up on it, and all of a sudden it's going to look like it's their idea. There have been many Grenadians who have been speaking about this thing. How do we monetize our culture? How do we develop cultural tourism? How do we make agriculture part of what we sell as part of our entire tourism package? So for me, the only thing, we have to move from a state of just mere conversation to see how we can put these plans and ideas, make them actionable. You know, we have, so whether my first choice would be to join up with Brother Pursoo or any other organization that has its goal looking at the Caribbean as one entity and how we can develop the region to better empower our people. There are too many opportunities been lost in education. There are too many opportunities been lost in healthcare. We are failing throughout many of these communities to take care of our older people who work hard. Some of them work 60, 70 years, 80 years, okay, to provide for us, to give us what we have. And now the society is failing to show gratitude to them. They miss opportunities in healthcare. Think about young people who throughout the Caribbean now, you're seeing almost an increased rate in the among the younger people dying. So this is all lost to the society. So how can we do that? What can we do? Can this group become a pressure group for governments in the Caribbean to tell them that here in the United States and Canada and other North America and other parts of North America, that we as Caribbean people work together to empower ourselves and to empower our communities? And if we can do it here, why can't we do it at home? So maybe the new push for genuine Caribbean and regional integration, genuine Caribbean and regional development, looking at what we do across different platforms, across different countries, who is better at what, and can they produce this at a better price that it'll be better for the Caribbean overall. These are the things that we have to do. So for me, Pablo, I want to move from where we are now. We have opined on this long enough. We have spoken about it long enough. We have taught, many of us have taught about it long enough. I know Val has been thinking about this all her life, you know, and as somebody who deeply and passionately care about empowering people. So I want us to be able to move from where we are now to an action plan. And there are some resources available that I'm aware of, that I have access to, where Denise talked about how do we multiply. So let's say we were going to take $1 million out of that $75 million that goes back to Grenada and invest in the right kind of markets, invest in the right kind of funds, where that $1 million can produce over a period of time, you know, so much more to help to empower small industries, whether it's cooperatives, agricultural cooperatives, construction cooperatives, in cooperatives in the skill field, whether in different fields of skill, whether it's plumbing or electrical or mechanics or all this thing. And I think post-pandemic, we are going to realize that working collaboratively together with people who share our common interests, common goal, live in common communities is going to be the way forward. And I want to be part of that, and I'm very much looking forward to contributing that way. I think your mic is muted, Pablo.
Sorry, yes. I was saying, based on all that's been said here this afternoon, it's evident that people do appreciate the fact that there need to be some kind of collective approach to addressing the challenges that the majority of Grenadians face, because we do agree that Grenada is mostly rural. And since Grenada is mostly rural and the rural communities are usually more densely populated than the urban communities, except in those areas as has happened in recent years as a consequence of people searching for jobs within the tourism sector. And so you find there's concentration of the population from the rural communities taking place in certain urban sectors. But generally speaking, the rural communities are usually much more densely populated, and you find the majority of our people living there. And as was indicated, I mean, Val spoke about the 2 surveys that's been done, and that's the reason why I try to have such a wide cross-section of people being on this panel this evening, this afternoon, because it really brought out the various elements that of our development that has to be addressed, right? If we are to go forward, and if we are to proceed, and if we are going to have some sustainable development. And so, based on all that's been said, while we do agree that there need to be some continuity, and that out of sessions like Comfort Zone, there has to be some coming together to work out the dynamics as to how we go forward and how we make this thing practical. And as we close for the afternoon, I want to get from each and every one of you, what do you see happening after today, and what role are you willing to play in whatever it is going to be taking place going forward? And I want to start with the lady first. One lady has already left us, and as she didn't get much time with us earlier on. I want to start with you, Miss Val Gordon. On our conversation, building our domestic rural economy on the pillars of diaspora financing and co-management. After today, what would you like to see happen? And what role do you think you can play in realizing that concept?
Despite the challenges and the difficulties, the depth and complexity of it, let me be very clear that I do think that something could be done about it. Maybe in my first contribution to the conversation, I ended on a note that might have been dire, but that would help to just register where things are at. Secondly, I want to bring to the fore that Grenada has done this before. Grenada and Grenadians have done this, meaning coming out of a difficult, very difficult period in its development and its economy before, and I'm talking about in the era of the revolution. So despite whatever weaknesses and issues, problems the revolution had, on balance, one must recognize that there were achievements, and many achievements in the rural parts of the island, and in a time when there were a lot of challenges.
Yes.
So I personally believe we can do it again. Grenadians can do this. Grenadians have resilience, right? So as bad as it may seem, I think it is possible. I want to also place the initiative I see by the Institute for People's Awareness in La Digue, where there is an effort to use the heritage and the assets of the community to build from the ground into a direction of development. And you may know that Peter Antoine is involved in that. I am already involved in the training of some of the potential leaders to form a board of directors. And I really like the approach that they're taking, because I think the bottom-up approach has merit. And we've tried the top-down approach a lot more than we've tried the bottom-up approach in development. And I think the potential is there. So I live in Montreal at the moment. I am very connected to Grenada. I'm involved in that initiative. I am involved in supporting Grenada in raising resources for the kids and so. And I make myself available, as I have been doing, to be part of an initiative that starts to seriously look forward with a belief that yes, we can. Yes, we can again. And while there's been a lot of talk, and I agree with Delbert, there's a lot of talk, but very often these things start with conversations, start with ideas. And then you find that there is commonality of ideas and a willingness among other people, which then encourages the process to start to coalesce into a much more powerful initiative. Yeah. I am not aware of sorry I missed the part where Mr. Pursoo spoke earlier. He might know me he may or may not know me. I worked with Nalo teaching at the St. Joseph's Convent many years ago. So with your sister as a girl guider at St. Joseph's Convent. Wow. So let me just put that there. Mm-hmm. So I have very strong, feelings and commitments, as Pablo, who knows me a little more, is familiar about the development in the rural parts of Grenada, and I've done a lot of work around that. So I would love to get some more information about this initiative that you have started. And I'd be willing to engage in any way that I can in looking at how we can take this process forward.
Thank you.
Okay, so that's it for you, Miss
Gordon Williams, but Val will do.
Yes, Miss Val. Yes, Val, that's it for you. There's a clip that I wanted to play, and before I get the comments of the others, I deliberately want to play that that clip. So, Brother John, if you have opportunities lined up for us, it's a clip from our previous conversation. As we get, and I think it's really going to inform on those presentations that we have, those closing remarks that we have coming from the others.
I saw when Cuba, they were inviting any of the other Caribbean islands, restaurant business in Cuba, to send up once a month, like a 40-foot container of vegetables like cabbage, tomato, and so forth. And these are lots of things we could do. We in the New York, in the diaspora, could also help to expand market opportunities for our country, right? There is lots of us here who are in contact with industries that could do marketing. I speak with Romain in L'Abbé Market on Nostrand Avenue. I know these guys would know him. And he said to me, he wished things could have been better done. That we're not doing things with half the efficiency that we ought to exploit the opportunities here. There's
efficiency. We're not doing things with half the efficiency that we can in order to exploit the opportunities there. We had Brother Thomas earlier on speaking about the need for certain professional level and approaches in terms of addressing these issues. And I have someone sent me a message which says that, and it speaks to what Ambassador Pursoo just mentioned, being able to access those markets out there, and he says that fishing made the most money last year, but we don't have Grenadians in the diaspora selling Grenada fish, etc. And I played this clip specifically to incite the conversation in this closing period about how do we leverage some of those opportunities? How do we make it happen? And as I'm asking everybody in this closing period, what do you see going forward? What do you expect? What would you like to happen going forward from here today? And what role are you willing to play in all of that? So from here, I am going to move on to, I'm going to put that on now to Brother Tony DaBreo.
Well, thanks again for the opportunity today. I think these are, somebody said it earlier on, that most ideas that ultimately are executed upon are the genesis is within conversation. So you have conversations, and ultimately you build on those conversations, build upon those ideas into a phase where we can execute and ultimately develop. But I think I would have to say that we have to rely heavily, Pablo, this is where you come in, and the local community comes in as well. I think we can make it as simple as you and others with the 5 dimensions of his organization, aligning those dimensions with individuals back home. And obviously we have to augment those because there are different needs and opportunities within the island itself. So I think recruitment is primary, and then using a forum even like this to begin to train and develop and educate those individuals in the area of thinking. I'll always come back to education. Okay, my desire to see people evolve, and it's as benign as this. There are people in Grenada today who will have mangoes rotten on the ground rather than give it to a neighbor who is hungry. Because, and if they're caught stealing that mango for which they need to satisfy that hunger, sometimes the authorities are called on them. So there's this formal education, and then we have to think more of a society, a collaborative society, a dependent society, where these things are no longer, those are vestiges of the colonial rulers, where you had to go get a pass to get a mango, and if you picked up the mango, you'll be charged or sent to get lashes at the local police station. We had to dispense with those, okay? So we talk about alignment with those sectors. I think if we invest in training and development, even as something as benign as maybe once a week, we get together here with folks that you've identified locally that can benefit from the resources that we collectively can provide. Because when I think about Grenadians and I think about the Caribbean, one, we're not lacking for intellect. No. We're not lacking for skill. We're not looking for resources. Then what the heck is it? Yeah. I think I know what it is, because we are fragmented. We are fragmented to the point where instead of having one organization that ultimately helps develop this nation, I tend to think of it as a nation, the Caribbean nation. We have so many different fragments trying to create their own little thing over here, their own little thing here. And by the way, evidence is on my side. Yeah. For the last 100 years, we've been trying to do what we're talking about here today and failing miserably. And it's not of lack of skill. It's not of lack of resources. It's our ability to accept or to seed leadership. We sometimes get into a group and we all want to lead. That is not feasible. It won't happen that way. We've got to seed leadership. And that's why I'd say to you, Pablo, you know what? You're running this thing. You got to run. I don't care how much education I have. I don't care how smart I am. We have to be humble enough to seed leadership to those who can execute on the ground. So I think we can start something quite simple here, where you can help in the recruitment of local folks. We can bring them on these forums, help develop them in thinking, in a more formal sense with regard to the disciplines we're trying to impact, and ultimately begin to, in a bite-sized fashion. He said, how do you need an elephant? One bite at a time. That's how you solve our problem. One bite at a time, one step at a time. And by the way, as unsophisticated as that may sound, you would be amazed to see the impact that a singular decision or a small, what people may call inconsequential set of activities could potentially have on the general economy of the Caribbean, whether it's rural, urban. I think it can have a dramatic impact, but it has to start with recruitment, training and development, and alignment. Alignment with ideas such as Dr. Pursoo, who talked about those 5 categories. And yes, we have to build beyond that, but I think that's where it needs to start. So I'm going to ask you in particular to start contemplating some recruitment and ultimately developing an initiative where we can start training folks in a forum like we have here today. Yeah.
Well, actually, I know that there are people here, some of them who have had either on the Comfort Zone program or on the Talking Point, who definitely will be overjoyed and will be totally committed towards such an endeavor. And that's why I feel that it's necessary that we leave here this afternoon with an indication, with a mindset, with an understanding, with an appreciation, with an agreement as to how we are going to proceed. What are we going to do? What is our next step after today? What do we do next? And so that's why I want to get to Mr. Thomas now. And Mr. Thomas, after all that you've heard for the afternoon and the input that you have made, the potential that you also agree that is available, and some of the ideas that you shared with, regarding the need for farmers to come together in a collective, which really falls in line with some of the indicators that we've received, which was like what was mentioned by Ambassador Pursoo about the demand for stuff out there that is not being met. What would you recommend that should happen going forward from here, and what role will be possible for you to play in such an endeavor?
Yeah, no, I think the problem, in my opinion, it's twofold, right? I think, first of all, I was a little bit ignorant because I wasn't sure we had so much support and people willing to help. Grenada, and a lot of the times, you know, I've been struggling to do it myself, right? Because, you know, if you depend on government, then 100 years from now, we'll still be in the same position. So I think we, as everyone that's on the show, we need to rally together and probably work with Brother Pursoo, or however he says last name. I apologize for messing it up. Okay. Yeah, and come together and form some.
I've been called worse than that. Don't worry.
I can attest to that.
Right. I wasn't sure if it was a typo. I was wanted to say Pursue, but it's you know. So forgive me for that one. Yeah, no, I think we need to work together and form some sort of strategic committee over here where we can rally the people, not just in the U.S. but in Canada or wherever. And kind of come together and really start brainstorming and coming up with ideas of how we can help develop, whether it's funding, whether it's education, because a lot of us here would have gone through our careers and we would have learned stuff that can really help people back in Grenada. The second point is like Anthony just said, we need to really recruit people on the island as well to form some sort of organization there that can speak directly to us and kind of inform us on various initiatives that's happening on the island so that we can rally our troops over here to start, you know, whether it's education, whether it's funding, whether it's, you know, any type of support we can to help grow the local economy. A lot of the times, you know, I've looked at it as, you know, without somebody on the ground in Grenada, it can't work. There is no way it's going to work. So we need to have people in Grenada as well that's on board with us, working together with us to achieve the bigger goal. And I think that's where progress really starts. We can have these meetings every single week, every single day. But if no action happened, then we would be having this conversation 10 years from now. So, you know, I would like for everyone on this committee or on this call to really stay connected and see how we can work together, you know, to help the local economy and also, you know, Pablo, you know, if you can work with some people or gather some people down in Grenada that we can meet with at least once every month so we can start brainstorming. We should start thinking about ideas to get this thing moving forward.
Oh, thank you very much, Mr. Thomas. I knew there was a good reason why I had to bring you here today. You had to be here. You had to be part of this conversation.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Everyone that's been invited to this conversation has been strategically chosen, you know, because of what the potential that they bring to the conversation. Because if you do not have a constructive conversation, then whatever it is that is constructed will not be functional, or will not function in the way that it is intended to. I'm going to leave Mr. Pursoo for last and get to Delbert now. Delbert, we've been talking these things, we've been here, and we speak about this thing not only on the conference, we speak about these things all the time on Talking Point, week in, week out. What is the line of march going forward? What do you want to see, and what role are you willing to play in this endeavor?
So I was thinking about it after you played the clip, all right? And I think one of the things that we probably going to need to look at moving forward is for us to use it in GEM FM as a platform. I don't know what day would be the best day. I don't know whether it could be done in a month or 2 or 6 weeks or whatever. But for us to organize a larger forum, okay? Let's put, I don't know, maybe get 3 or 4 or probably 5 people on a panel, and give them some very specific areas to present to as it relates to overall development. And I would very much like to see it not just be only Grenadians, but people from other islands, and create a sort of workshop and try to invite as many people. So give us some time to organize it, publicize it the right way. I mean, we have the advantage of this platform, Zoom via GEM FM, that can accommodate quite a large cross-section of people. So if we can organize a sort of, put together an organizing conference to have some leading experts in the field of development, in the field of poverty elimination, in the field of how do you organize among people in underdeveloped nations. There's just a number of different topics that would be important to get us off in the right way. But if we can put together in the next 6 to 8 weeks a conference, a working conference, and make some strong presentation, have some really vibrant discussion. They're Grenadians, so you know the discussion is going to be vibrant. And from that, that initiative that everybody spoke so clearly and so eloquently about can come out of that, and we can create a new vehicle and a new sort of mantra for change in Grenada and in the region. I'm on board. It doesn't matter what role I have to play. If my role today is to fill the glasses of water at the table, I'll do it. If tomorrow it is to drive 2 people to something, I will do it. It does not matter. I am no longer interested in and as Tony spoke about so much, you know, we have to be willing to see leadership. And you can lead from your own area. You do not always have to be the person. You can lead from your own area. Sometimes just by your initiative, just by your demeanor, just by how you talk and relate to people, you are showing leadership. So I'm willing to do whatever it takes. I'm on board. I'm 100% on board. And as you know, I'm planning to return to the Caribbean. You know, this is my home and where I want to be. So I'll have some more time to dedicate to that.
Okay, so thank you very much, Delbert. Mr. Pursoo, you already have this initiative with the Caribbean Diaspora Enterprise, and we've heard the presentations and the opinions of the others on the panel here of that we don't necessarily need to reinvent the wheel, but we can work within the umbrella and within the ambits of this CARICOM diaspora operation. And I want to get in your closing remarks here, how do you see this going forward, and what is your expectation, and how do you see the Grenadian component of this whole operation being able to leverage from the agenda of what you have started?
Well, thank you very much, Pablo. And let me ask your indulgence, even before I make my comments, to give a shout out to Valerie Gordon Williams. Mm-hmm. When she said she was from Grenada, then I said to myself, then I must know her. We could not have grown up so close by and not know each other. But then I realized she's very young compared to me, so, so it's possible that I missed her. But let me say that I'm very impressed with your input. I think that we have a solid person in Montreal. So I'm looking forward to us connecting and working together. I also want to say to, well, let me just, to Tony, this show has given me a friend in you. We call each other all the time, for those of you who don't know. We just exchange ideas without any kind of formalities. We talk as if we have been friends from boyhood. And I really like that. Delbert, I know you from way back, not too way back, but I'm so thrilled with your evolution. It's a pleasure to hear some of your ideas, and it's very, very promising that we going to get some good things done here. I want to say to Mr. Thomas, I've never met you before, but I know Coach Naka very well. In fact, I think I introduced him to Coach McKillop in Davidson.
Okay.
Yeah, and I did a couple basketball camps at SGU in Grenada and a coach's clinic. So I'm very familiar with the basketball scene in Grenada. And And I'm happy to hear that you were one who emerged out of Coach Naka's program and went on to better things. It's good to see you and to hear your ideas too. Mr. Calliste, I want to say this to you. I used to correspond with you on Facebook thinking you were my brother-in-law. Because I have a brother-in-law by the name of John Calliste. Having been married, my wife her maiden name is Calliste. So I'm pretty sure that we are related, at least by marriage.
Yes.
We'll find that out and build on that, I could assure you. And to Pablo, I can't thank you enough for doing this thing. Look, we need people like you. That's the only, look, I mean, and please keep that image behind your back there, that coconut tree on the beach there. Man, it's energizing me just to see it. So, but let's go back to the real substance of the thing. I want to say something about remittance. I want to remind us that as important as remittances are, it's an opportunity, not a magic bullet. You know, even if we are able to send millions of dollars in remittances, that doesn't guarantee progress. It doesn't guarantee anything. I think more than financial remittances from the diaspora is an opportunity to create relations for development. Relations. There are values in our people that are more than money could measure. And I think that is what we need to tap into. You know, I remember, and no need for me to call the names, but Grenada tried something recently with this whole relationship with the diaspora, but it was so poorly politicized that it showed through that it was not really genuine. They were not interested in relations with the diaspora. They wanted to just use it politically to get funds from the diaspora. That won't work, my friends. That won't work. We have a genuine opportunity to create relationships between the diaspora and the homeland. And that relationship is what has the potential to create transformation. And that's the way I would like to see us going. Now, make no bones about it. I am not bashful in saying that the day I stop loving and stop committing myself to progress in Grenada, that's the day I would be 6 feet under. Yeah. I would always be ready to do what I can for development in Grenada. As we speak, I'm doing programs in Grenada. I'm building a tennis court in Grenville, right? And even though people say, boy, you're crazy, you're always starting things and struggling. Well, I don't mind struggling. I love struggling. There's beauty in struggling, especially when you have an objective that is for the betterment. I could say me, or I could say neighbor. I choose to say neighbor. Yeah. That's where I'm coming from. So regarding my commitment, you could rest assured it's there. Now, what I would like to see, I'd like to see some of this discussion continue. But eventually, I would like us to get together. There's nothing like face-to-face. Yes. In Grenada. I would like us to go to the rural areas, meet with people in the rural areas, do a study by being there, listening, talking to them, listening to the problems, and then getting together and designing a program that we believe would work. See, we need that study because so often people come and say, do this, do that, and then we didn't really put the right study into it. I could remember sitting in the UN a few times and watching so-called experts return from Africa who went down there with their the briefcase and their brain and think they were going to remake Africa. And they come back, when they spend about 2 months in Africa, they dust out the African dust from their pants, they fold their briefcase and came back and say, we're sorry. Yeah. It didn't work. Well, we've seen that game played so often before. That's why I would like us, a group of us, to go down, spend some time in the rural areas, meet with the people, listen to the problem. That's a study. Yeah. And Then we together, using the input from there, let us design a program that we really give some thorough examination to evaluate the program to make sure that we feel comfortable, and let's move on with that. And I look forward to doing that, not only to listen to them, but to, at the end of the day, knocking a glass with each other and saying, it is a pleasure to work together.
Absolutely.
I look forward to that.
Okay, well, definitely that I expect that time will come. In the interim, there are some things that we need to do based on all that we have said before and all that has come out of this exchange here this afternoon. It is evident that, one, there is a need to have some kind of construct of a diaspora grouping, right, that is going to liaise with the that entity that's already been established. That's one. Two, there needs to be a local entity made up of like-minded people looking at that is going to network with the local communities here, the rural communities here, and be able to begin that conversation that Ambassador Pursoo referred to as to reaching out to the people on the ground and getting an appreciation of what the actual requirements are. Although in a general sense we do know, but you may go to a specific area and there might be a particular approach that might be unique to their situation. Is not every community that is going to lend itself to fishing. Same way is not every community that is going to lend itself to the development of an agricultural project. So we're able to identify what fits where and what are some of the approaches and what all the requirements are going to be to make it happen. So I believe that we have agreed that there needs to be a coming together outside of this comfort zone forum where we sit down and we begin to work out these nitty-gritty elements that is going to establish the line of march, the specific activities and events that will have to happen for us to begin to realize and to bring to fruition, to bring to reality this whole issue of building our domestic rural economy on the pillars of diaspora financing and co-management. And that is going to be critical. Co-management. It means that that diaspora entity will have to be collaborating with the local domestic entity in terms of managing every element of this endeavor, every element of whatever project or so that comes into being, because it has to be a hand-holding exercise so that we can move from one stage to the other. Because one of the reasons why some of the initiatives before have failed is that we've not had appropriate training. That's one. And two, we've let go the hands of some of these people too quickly. And as a consequence, you did not have the requisite management capacities that was gotten into. So I want to, today is the 17th, I want to mandate that between now and the end of the month, that there is some behind the scenes networking between this group here in order to organize a special session. We can have a special Zoom session, one that is not in the public domain, where we spend an hour or 90 minutes or whatever appropriate time to begin to work out these nitty-gritty elements and to begin to set the actual line of march going forward. So between this and the end of the month, I expect that something like that is going to happen. Can we commit to that?
Absolutely.
Yes, we can.
Yeah.
Hey, Pablo, I have a quick question. Is there a way you can potentially gather everyone contact information and share with the larger group so we all can have that information?
Wonderful. Well, presently I have contact information for Val, I have for Tony, I have for Mr. Pursoo, I have for Delbert, I have for John Calliste. I only have you on Messenger.
So I'll send you my contact information.
Pablo.
Yes, sir.
I just want you to know, is Val still on?
Yes, she is. Yeah, Val is still on.
Val, Pablo just took me right back to my NSC days with his use of the term line of march. I just wanted to.
Well, I'm here thinking the same thing.
I just want to put that out there, you know.
It's been borrowed from that dispensation.
Pablo, if I may ask,
because I come from that period also. I lived through that period, you know, and that is the reason why. That's the reason why, as Val made the reference earlier on, you know, that period had its challenges. We had it up, it had its down, but there are some development realities that cannot be ignored. You know, and these things have we saw it happen, we saw it play out during that period, we saw the benefits that resulted from it, and we're living some of these benefits up to today. And I mean, that is indisputable. Whatever you want to think about it, whatever sentiments you have, whatever you may have experienced during that period, it doesn't change these realities, you know. And I feel it's critical that if we are going to give a true picture of our history, that it's imperative that we address all of those elements and we highlight every aspect of it. If we are going to learn the lessons, because we speak all the time about learning lessons from our experiences. But if you're ignoring the experience as if it didn't take place, then you're not going to learn any lesson from it. You have to appreciate it as something that would have happened. You know, and it's imperative that we really begin to develop this mindset. That's another thing, again, we've talked very much about the need to begin to change mindsets. So it was a very productive.
Excuse me, Pablo, before you leave, yes. I just want to recommend that you go ahead and act on what you just suggested, that you build at your end a liaison group.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Because in the CDU, what we have an ambassador delegated to every Caribbean country. And as soon as you design that, I would put our Grenadian ambassador in touch with you, and they're charged to visit the country that they're responsible for, to meet with people there, and to develop their intelligence and expertise on the country. So we're waiting on you. As soon as you are ready, the next step from my end here, from my organization, is to make sure that I put the person responsible for Grenada in touch with you. But that's not going to be the only person. He or she will be accompanied by a delegation from the CDU.
Okay, thank you very much. So we have these. Yes, go ahead. Yes, go ahead, Val.
I'm just saying that it's the first time I'm hearing about the CDU, so I would appreciate some more information about it, and
I would definitely.
So we can share it with you to email or whatever, so that I can get whatever.
Pablo is free to share information about the CDU, but just quickly, the easiest way to get us is to just Google CDUusa.org. That's our website, CDUusa.org.
Okay, thanks. Thank you.
And you can take my number if you want to. It's 516.
Sorry, wait, I have to write. I don't have anything to write at the moment. It's 516 what?
359.
359.
0417.
516-359-0417.
Yeah, or give me yours and I'll just text mine to you.
Yeah, right, because I don't have anything to write.
So just give me yours.
514 718
718
6471.
Okay, I'll text my number to and contact information to you.
Perfect. Thanks. Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, so I'll be gathering all of those information and I'll be sharing, disseminating it to those who do not have contact information for the others. And as you said, so we have 2 timelines working with there. We have one that between now and the end of the month, we as a team and involving whoever else we feel may be necessary, that we have a round table conversation among ourselves to begin to work out to the nitty-gritty as to how we are going to proceed on this issue. That's one. Within the same timeline also, I will be on this end, will be working, identifying people. Well, I've identified a few of them already, but we'll be bringing these people together, mobilizing these people so that we can begin I can begin to get them to have an appreciation of what is being planned, the intentions, and how we can work together to make it happen. So once again, thank you very much to every one of you for giving of your important time to come here this afternoon and for us to have this conversation. Thank you to those of you who joined us this afternoon and would have made comments in the comments section. I want to say I look forward to having you again and to you playing a role in this whole initiative going forward, and because we will be keeping you posted as to those developments. And I want to finally say thank you to Brother John for making all of this possible with your GEM FM platform. Yeah. Good afternoon. And
all right, gentlemen. Good afternoon.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right,
Brother John.
Take care, everybody.
Thank you very much, Pablo.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Okay, bye.
Everybody have a nice weekend.
You too. All the best.
You too.
All right.
Bye.
Pablo, thank you again one more time, man.